Welcome to Mighty Married Moms. Join us at our kitchen table twice a week as the Mighty Married Moms, Debbie, Linda, Wendy,
invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy,
building marriages with soul-satisfying connection, raising happy, healthy, successful kids. Conversations with Mighty Married Moms will bring you closer to the life you really want. Episode 116. Today's show is brought to you by Deborah C. Owen, Family and Life Coach at YouCanRaiseGreatKids.com. If you are tired of worrying about the choices your kid is making, or tired of the stress of constantly arguing with your kids, or them arguing with each other, then don't wait until you are truly desperate. Get the help you and your family need and deserve today. Connect with your kids with calm compassion. Call Deborah Owen at 978-835-4354. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mighty Married Moms. I'm Debbie Owen from YouCanRaiseGreatKids.com.
And I'm Wendy Williams from ConnectAgain.org.
And I'm Linda Tighe from AllWellBreaksLoose.com.
And we have a very special guest today, Dr. Bradley Nelson. We are really excited to have him here. But before we get into our questions, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. So modern science increasingly verifies a truth that runs through ancient healing systems. The mind and body are intimately connected, with our thoughts and emotions exerting a powerful influence on our health. Probing the frontiers of our ability to heal physical and mental disease through emotional surgery, our guest today, Dr. Bradley Nelson, is one of the world's foremost experts in the emerging fields of bioenergetic medicine and energy psychology. We're going to unpack that a little bit. The idea of energy medicine is certainly not new, because ancient records describe the use of energy or prana or chi for healing as far back as 4000 BC. In fact, 95% of ancient cultures worked with energy in specific ways to effect healing. But it's only with the advent of quantum physics that energy has really been acknowledged in contemporary Western medicine. So from his more than 20 years of practice as a holistic physician, Dr. Brad discerned that the vast majority of physical pain, disease, and mental and emotional problems that his patients were suffering from was rooted in trapped emotions, the unseen emotional baggage we all carry from hurtful life experiences. And through his studies of ancient medical practice and modern quantum physics, he developed the emotion code, a simple yet powerfully effective method anyone can learn in order to release trapped emotions that block mental and physical healing. Today, Dr. Brad is spreading the knowledge of the emotion code, as well as the advanced version, the body code system, internationally through lectures and his best-selling book, The Emotion Code. If you don't have it, you should go get it. It's a great book. And Dr. Brad, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Well, let's start by, tell us a story of some of maybe your internal shift that brought you from being, I think, a chiropractor, right, to being the emotional healer that you are now.
Well, just in a nutshell, I'll tell you the story of what happened to me.
Okay.
It started out actually when I was 7 years old.
Oh.
I was really sick with the measles, and the plan was, from listening to my parents talk, the plan was the next day I was going into the hospital into what they used to call an oxygen tent. They don't have this anymore, but this is a long time ago.
Okay.
And I was really sick. My parents had made a bed for me upstairs so I could be near their bedroom. And everyone else had gone to bed, and they came into the room, and my mother said to my dad, she said, "Honey, will you kneel down with me and say a prayer that our boy will be able to get well?" So they did. They knelt down by the side of the couch. I don't think I'd ever heard my dad pray before. But anyway, he said this very sincere, heartfelt prayer that I'd be able to get well. While he was praying, I felt this change. It started at the top of my head, and it went whoosh through my body, and I was instantly made well. It was totally undeniable and totally unforgettable. I mean, one moment, and to be totally well the next instant, you don't ever forget that as long as you live.
No.
Yeah.
I held my tongue. I didn't say anything until he was done praying, which didn't take long. And I said, "I'm well. I'm better. Heavenly Father healed me." And my parents said, "That's fine, honey. You're
Go back to sleep.
Going into the oxygen tent."
Okay.
But that was a pivotal event for me, because it taught me that there's something more than what we see. There's a higher power we can draw upon. And I never forgot about that. Well, fast forward about 7 more years, I ended up with kidney disease. And it was diagnosed at the medical hospital, but there was nothing that they could do for me. It was quite serious, but no treatment available. So my parents decided that they would take me someplace else. Since Western medicine had nothing to offer, they took me to see some alternative holistic doctors back then who practiced out on the edge of town in a trailer house in a muddy field.
Wow.
Wow.
They would have busloads of people coming to see them. They were true healers, and they actually healed me. So within 2 or 3 weeks, I was feeling dramatically better. Pains were pretty much completely gone, and these were pains that would put me on the ground. I mean, it was serious. And I decided I wanted to be that kind of a doctor. Well, as time went on, I got more and more involved in computers and business, and I was about 6 months away from going into the MBA program at BYU and Brigham Young University.
Okay.
And I'd forgotten about this other path that I had chosen long before. And we were sitting around with my mom and dad one night, Christmas time, 1983, and my dad said to me, totally out of the blue, "Are you sure you don't want to go to chiropractic school and go into the healing arts? You've always wanted to do this, and it seems like a great career." And I said, no. I got it all figured out. I'm going this other direction. And he said, "Well, why don't you think about it one more time?" And I said, "Well, okay." So we did. So my wife and I made up a pro and con list, and we still didn't know what to do. So that night I got on my knees, knowing that there was a higher power up there. I got on my knees and I prayed about it. And that night I had this experience where I was awakened 3 different times to find my mind full of these warm, happy, fuzzy, thoughts about healing and how great it is to heal naturally and so on.
Okay.
I still wasn't convinced. So the next night I'm on my knees again praying, asking God to help me to know what to do. This night I had a really profound experience where I was awakened again 3 different times. And each time that I was awakened, my mind was full of these thoughts of how wonderful it is to heal. But this night was different because each time that I was awakened, those feelings were geometrically more powerful than the time before. So the third time that I was awakened on that second night, I can't describe it. It was overwhelming. Thoughts of service to mankind and humanity. And right then I actually heard a voice that spoke to me. And it said, "This is a sacred calling." And I knew that was the answer. And I joke with people that that's when my hair fell out, but that's not really true.
Keep it in.
So when I got into practice, I figured God had gotten me into this, and he needed to help me now. And so I got in the habit of asking for help.
I know that feeling.
What I saw, right? Yeah. And so so I would just take a moment. It was a totally private, totally personal thing, but I would just take a moment and ask for help from God to help this person. And as time went on, more and more information came through. And there were times, especially during the last 10 years of my practice, when I was in a brick and mortar practice for 17 years. There were times during those last 10 years when I was specializing really in seeing people and working with people who had been told there was no cure for them available at all in Western medicine. There were times when I would offer that silent prayer for help, and information would just flood into my mind about what that person needed. Sometimes it was a totally different way of looking at things than what I'd ever even imagined before. And so finally I realized, and I kind of got the message from up above, all this information, this isn't just for you, silly person. This is for everybody. You need to get out of what you're doing now, get out of your practice. You need to write a book. And that was the Emotion Code, which came out in 2007. And it's in multiple languages now all over the world. And we literally get testimonials every day now from people all over the world whose lives are changing simply by getting rid of their emotional baggage. It's really an amazing thing.
Right.
Wow.
That is an amazing
All right, we can go
story
home
of
now.
revelation.
Yeah.
Chills listening
I
to
know,
it.
me
It's
too.
really wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, let's I mean, that's an amazing story about how you got to doing what you're doing and what your why is. I mean, that's such an important thing. We all need to have a why for getting up every day and doing the things that we do. So for people who aren't familiar with it, what exactly is energy medicine? And then let's go a little further into what is the energy code and what are trapped emotions. Let's define a few things.
Absolutely. Well, quantum physicists have been telling us for over 100 years that the human body is really made of nothing but energy. I mean, you look at your hand and that hand looks solid and it's made of bone and muscle and et cetera. But if you magnify the hand 1,000,000 times, you're looking at the basic building block of the hand, which is the atom. And if you look inside the atom, you see there's really nothing in there. It's just empty space and these little infinitesimally tiny energies that are zipping around at the speed of light. We are beings of pure energy. We're energy beings. And now finally in the 21st century, we're starting to realize, and we're starting to admit that. It's taken us a while to wrap our minds around that, but it really is true. Now, Western medicine, of course, is based on pharmaceuticals and it's based on surgery, but a higher order of healing really is to look at the body as what it really is, which is a field of energy. It's really a profound thing, and it's the medicine of the future. There's no question about it. So what happens to us, you see, is we experience different emotions sometimes that can be very powerful. We've all been through events and circumstances that we would rather not have had to have gone through. We experience breakups and divorce and deaths in the family and all kinds of things. When we're experiencing intense emotions from those experiences, what happens is on a quantum level, your whole being can take on this new vibration. Every emotion has a specific vibration. Anger is a different energy than sadness, and that's different from frustration and so on. When we're feeling an intense emotion, the energy of that emotion can be so powerful that when that event is over, when the bully moves away or the divorce is over or the funeral is over or whatever, you can still be holding on to some of that energy in the form of a trapped emotion. And a trapped emotion we find is literally a ball of emotional energy from about the size of a baseball to about the size of a cantaloupe. Now, we all have these. We all have these. And what these are doing to us is they are disrupting the course of our lives, you see. They're disrupting our physical health, our emotional health, our mental health. They create depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and PTSD and eating disorders. They're the underlying reason why people can't find their soulmate. They're the underlying reason, or an underlying reason, the most common underlying common denominator for all the disease process that we suffer from. So in 27 years, every cancer, for example, that I've seen has had emotional baggage there as part of the cancer. Every disease process, all of it. And so this is it's really the elephant in the living room in Western medicine. That we're missing completely. And in fact, they just came out with this study. I don't know if you saw this, but they found that Holocaust victims' offspring are affected genetically, and their health is affected by the experiences their ancestors went through. Extrapolate that out to the whole world. I bet every one of us here on this conference and everybody listening has had ancestors that have gone through difficult things.
Oh, sure.
The energy that from them often is passed to us, and that's part of what we can find to get rid of simply and easily using the emotion code.
Yeah. Amazing stuff.
Oh my, right.
And it has the added benefit of being true.
Right.
Yes.
When you described the energy and you put your hands up and made the shape of a baseball or a lemon or a cantaloupe and so forth in terms of that ball, you also described that, the event is gone, the bully moved away, the divorce has happened, but you're still holding on to the energy.
Right.
A way that strikes me is I'm still holding on to the anxiety of that, the feeling of that. To me, that's a more accessible word than energy. But am I wrong? And to say that the energy is actually my leftover anxiety that I just go, okay, that's done. I don't need to deal with that anymore. But it's still festering in there. And if I saw the bully come at the mall, I go, oh, it would come up again. Is that?
Yeah, it totally would. That's one of the side effects. You see, these trapped emotional energies affect us really in two ways. They affect us physically, because what's going on when you have this trapped emotion, this ball of energy in the body, and remember, the body's just an energy field. What that energy does is it distorts the normal energy field of the body. And because that's all the body is, when you distort the energy field of the body, you are actually ultimately interfering with the physical body itself. You're interfering to some degree with blood flow. You're interfering with the flow of energy in that area. It's a profound thing. The other thing that happens is these trapped emotions affect us on a mental, emotional level. And I can't tell you how many times when we find some emotional baggage and release it, people change how they feel. In fact, let me tell you a story that illustrates this really well.
Sure.
There's a man who came to me many years ago, and he was suffering from low back pain, really severe. It was about a 9 on the 0 to 10 scale. 10 is call 911. And I found that he had a trapped emotion in his back of anger. And I released that trapped emotion of anger, and the pain level went from a 9 to a 0, just that fast. Now, this is not unusual at all.
Wow.
In fact, if you're in pain right now, there's about a 90% probability that there's emotional baggage that is causing the pain, believe it or not. And anyway, so he was thrilled. He was blown away that this was so immediate. But a few days later, he came back to me, and he said, my back has been fine since you released that anger. But he said, I have had a problem for a long time that I didn't tell you about. He said, as long as I can remember, I've had this anger problem. And he said, I've tried anger management, different things. I have to be careful of the road rage. He said, I'm always yelling at my wife and my kids. But he said, since you released that trapped emotion of anger from me, I feel different. I just feel kind of relaxed. He said, how does that work? How is that possible? And at the time I said, well, I have no idea. I did. This is what we believe. You see, think about this. When you have a trapped emotion of anger, depression, or resentment, or sadness, whatever it is, the tissues that are within that ball, within that sphere of anger, those tissues are literally feeling that emotion 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because an emotion is a vibration. It's an energy vibration.
Yeah.
And so when we release that, you see, in his situation, whenever something would happen to him that might tend to make him feel angry, it would make him feel angry. He'd slide right into that resonance so easily. Why? Because part of his body was already just humming away at that particular frequency. So what we're doing, you see, is we're gaining a new understanding of what our emotions are, how they affect us long term, and how they can become trapped in the body. Let me tell you one more story.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a woman not too long ago, and she told me about what happened. She said she got the emotion code book and the book on audio. She started reading it and listening to it, and her son started reading it and listening to it as well. And he started practicing with his friends. And she didn't pay too much attention, but a couple of weeks later, the phone rang. And the woman on the other end of the phone line identified herself as the mother of one of her son's friends. And she said, your son has been doing this emotion thing with the boys. And she said, I haven't paid too much attention, but she said, something really dramatic has happened. She said, my son has had a phobia of water all of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Taken him to different people. Nothing has ever helped him. She said, right now, my son is in the pool swimming.
Wow.
She said, your son did this to him. She said, I cannot understand how this is even possible. What in the world is he doing? Those two boys are only 11 years old.
Oh
Wow.
my God.
That's how powerful this is, you see.
That's
And that little boy, the little boy with the phobia of water, who knows what happened? Maybe that happened during the time he was in the womb and he thought he was going to drown. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But that phobia all his life. So you see, the emotion code works, for pain. It helps phobias, all kinds of things. It's just a matter of finding the baggage and getting rid of it. And then suddenly, when you get rid of enough emotional baggage, it's like stepping out of this old skin that you've been wearing and stepping out into this new state of being that is much closer to who God really intends for you to be, is how I look at it.
Yeah. One of the things that comes through when I read, and I've listened to a number of your webinars and I've read the book, is also the fact that that little 11-year-old boy with the phobia that didn't want to swim, he didn't study you. He didn't study the emotion code. He wasn't a believer. He was just a little boy doing his thing, saying, sure, you want to talk to me, fine, whatever. There's no need to believe or to buy in or to trust or anything. It's a modality that seems to be very accessible with or without our buy-in.
Yeah, absolutely right. And the ultimate example that we see there is animals, because it works beautifully with animals. And animals, there's no placebo effect there. They just suddenly get better. But it's just like people. 90% of the behavioral problems that animals have, your cat's peeing in your shoes or whatever it is, those things, animals do funny things. Their behavioral problems, but also their physical problems, their lameness. In fact, let me tell you another story. I was called one day to work on a horse that was having some problems with lameness in its hindquarters. And I checked the horse, and it had a trapped emotion that was causing this imbalance. And the emotion was sadness. Now, in the emotion code book, we teach you how to find these things. It's actually really, really simple, and most people can identify an emotion within a minute. It's very easy.
Okay.
Anyway, sadness was the emotion. So I have a little crowd of people gathered around at this stable, and I'm working on this horse, and I'm asking these questions. Well, was it sadness about a human being? No. The answer comes back, no. Was it about a dog or a cat? No. Another horse? No. I'm kind of running out of ideas. And a bird suddenly flies overhead. And so I thought, well, let's ask about birds. Was it sadness about a bird? And the answer came back very strong. That's what it was. And everyone started laughing that was watching this. And I started laughing too because I thought this is just so silly. But the horse's owner was there. And she said, wait a minute.
It was a bird.
I think I might know what this is about. The week before, she said, right immediately in front of her horse's stall, a baby bird fell out of its nest and fell down onto the roadway and struggled for its life and died.
Oh.
The horse was a mute witness to this whole tragedy, and it was overcome with sadness, and that emotion got stuck in the horse, trapped in the horse's body. Suddenly, the horse is lame. They had 2 vets come and look at the horse. They couldn't figure it out, nothing obvious. We released the emotion on the horse, and they took it out, walked it, perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Well, there's a whole world going on with animals that we...
There's a whole world going on with all of us.
Yeah.
Well, and as I mentioned before we started the recording, my sister Karen Cundy, who is a prior guest, works with rescued horses and rescued dogs, and she swears by this stuff for animals as well as for people. Really,
I read
really
about
powerful.
it with plants too. I mean, if you want to get really out there, but you know, their energy too. Everything is energy. So
Well, sure.
why
I mean,
not?
that's the whole bit about quantum physics. They've done
Right.
a lot of experiments, and it's amazing that it does do something.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm curious to know, the other piece of this is like, if you and I were to have a conversation, I mean, you on the other end of Zoom and me here in Massachusetts, I mean, we could do something. Can you explain in terms of you know, solving through the emotion code, healing and stuff? So
Right.
how does that work when one person is so far away?
Yes.
Can you describe that?
And
for,
I have a
for our
related
audience?
question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we don't totally understand it, but it has to do with quantum physics. The reality is we're all connected energetically. I mean, if you're standing on a beach looking out at the islands in the ocean, they might look totally separate, but if you were to drain the water out of the ocean, you'd see they're all connected, right?
Interesting.
That's how it is with us. Now, the human body has this amazing ability built right into it to set aside its own needs to act on behalf of someone else, and we call this working by proxy. And so I demonstrate it every week on our webinars. And when I was in practice, the only time I ever used this was when a patient of mine would go on some kind of a vacation or a trip, and then they'd call me telling me that they were in pain, and I would work on them at a distance. And I never learned this from anybody. It was just something that I intuitively knew how to do. But now we teach it in the emotion code and in the body code as well. And it works so well that we have now about 2,500 certified emotion code practitioners and body code practitioners in about 160 countries now that actually do this for a living, where they work on other people at a distance.
At a
I'll
distance.
tell you something. First, if you try this, I don't care who you are, the first time you try this, working with somebody that's far away, maybe they're in another state or on the other side of the planet, maybe they're in pain, you release some emotional baggage from them, and their pain level goes from 7 or 8 or 9 to 0. Your life's going to change in that moment, because you'll realize that we are capable of so much more than we've ever realized. We sell ourselves short. We have so much capability and so much power. It's really amazing.
That is amazing.
It works.
I know a practitioner, and I've had 3 treatments myself, and I can, I won't take up our time, but the bottom line is I'm very different in the way that I respond to life in this particular area. Now.
Yeah. Since the treatment.
Since the treatments, yes. And my friend that is the practitioner says that she's collecting information on the impact of, let's just say she worked with me, my work issues are much calmer, down to a 0, took them all down. And then if she were to ask me and say, there's been some positive movement for my husband, who was never in the room, never involved in the conversation. She's
Right.
collecting data on family members or people who live or are around that the person that she's treating getting better from things. Do you know?
Yes.
Tell me.
That happens. Oh yeah, that happens absolutely. When one person in a relationship changes and starts getting rid of their emotional baggage, the other person will change. We don't understand everything about this so far, but it is one of the things that we observe. So I'm glad that she's starting to collect some data on it. It's a fascinating thing.
Yeah, this friend is a former guest on our show as well, and a big fan of yours, by the way.
Yeah.
So they practice, they've learned from you and are practicing, and they're amazing.
Yeah.
Make a big difference for families.
Totally.
I have to tell you, I got a testimonial recently from a woman in Italy, and she sent me a picture of herself and her husband standing in front of this little teeny village way up high, the village that they live in, this tiny village in Italy. And she said, I had a very difficult marriage for a long time, for many years. And then she said, I got a new husband. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, oh, she got a divorce and this is her new husband. But no, what happened was, she said, a practitioner in Budapest worked on my husband and cleared his heart wall. And it's like I have a new husband now. He's really nice. He's really warm. He loves me. Things have totally changed. She was very happy. You could tell in the picture.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that something? I got a new husband.
New husband.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things
we want a new husband.
yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. One of the things that you talk about too is associating certain organ systems with certain emotions. How did that develop? And for those who might, if you could just give a little bit, because people may say, "What is she talking about?" But
right, absolutely. Well, what I believe is that anciently, in the Eastern medicine, they observed that different people who had different emotions that were predominant in their lives would have problems with certain organs in the body. For example, people whose lives are ruled by anger would always seem to have trouble with the liver or gallbladder. People whose lives are ruled by grief would have trouble with their lungs or their colon and so on. Wow. So they mapped out all these different emotions and connected them up to all these different organs in the body. Well, you don't hear this much anymore, but I believe that they were absolutely right. What I believe is that the organs in the body are actually frequency generators, that when we feel a certain emotion, the organ is actually generating that vibrational frequency that we feel. Now, this is kind of a unique understanding in the emotion code, but if you think about this, it makes perfect sense. Think about people who drink, for example. People who drink oftentimes get angry and break things, they hurt people, etc., right? How many people are in prison because they were drunk and they, did something bad? Right. All the time. Well, think about this. The prime emotion that the liver produces is anger. So when you're drinking, you overstimulate the liver and it produces that frequency, or it can. There's other frequencies as well. Mm-hmm. Think about another great example that's in the book is Dana Reeve, Christopher Reeve's wife. Remember her? Mm-hmm. He had that terrible accident. He became a quadriplegic, and she stuck by his side. He passed away about a year later. She was diagnosed with lung cancer, and people say,
never smoked.
Yeah. People said, it must have been secondhand smoke. No, wasn't that. She was a secret smoker. No, it wasn't that. The lung produces, the prime emotion that the lungs produce is grief. Think of all the grief that she had. She had a perfect storybook life, and think about what happened to her. Yeah. And she died not long after that. So you see, that's the connection between the organs and the emotions. It's interesting.
So you've taken some ancient Eastern wisdom that was already mapped out, and said, I'm gonna tap into that and use that as we progress with the emotion code. Use that as another direction signal to help you make these determinations.
Yeah, and in the emotion code, here's a picture of the emotion code chart. I don't know if you can see this.
Yep.
But there are 60 emotions on this chart, and it's divided up into 2 columns and 6 rows. And you'll see that on the far left side, we have the organs listed.
Yep.
And so you can see what emotions are produced by which organs and so on. And by the way, the chart is organized in this way, so it makes it really, really easy to find and identify the emotion. Yeah. Now, I have to tell you another story, all right, if we have time.
Yes. We'll do whatever you have time for. We're here as long as you are.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I've got all day. we had a problem with one of our twins. We have twin boys. Now they're 26 years old. But when one of them was about, when they were about 4 years old, one of them was a chatterbox and talked nonstop. The other one would not speak more than a word at a time. And we thought he had a hearing problem. We took him to get his hearing checked. Nothing wrong. We couldn't figure it out what was wrong with this little guy. But he was not speaking in full sentences. So my wife and I one night decided to, and this is when we were first learning about how to use, how to find these trapped emotions. We worked on him when he was asleep, okay, because when they were awake, we couldn't catch them. They were
Okay.
Yeah, that's boys, yeah.
Yeah, you can relate to this. So he was asleep. We worked on him, and what we found was that he had inherited an emotion of anger from my wife's father, from his grandfather, who, by the way, was a great guy, but kind of a rageaholic, had that problem. So we released that emotion on him. He's asleep. He doesn't know we worked on him, nothing. So the next morning at breakfast, he comes into breakfast, sits down at the table. We're all sitting around. And suddenly, for the first time in his life, he's speaking in full sentences. Wow. And just talking and talking and talking. And my wife and I were just looking at each other like, holy smokes, can you believe this? This is unbelievable. We didn't have a video camera at the time. We were too broke, but it would have been great to have on camera.
Yeah.
And, so, you know, this is the kind of thing that we see with children. It's so powerful.
Right.
Not long after this, I think it was the next day, I went to my office and I was telling one of my patients about this. And she said, she said, my daughter has a problem. She said, I think her daughter was 6 years old. She said, my husband is an airline pilot, so he's gone for days at a time. When he gets home, she runs and hides from him. And it just breaks his heart.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I said, well, bring her in. Let's take a look at her. So she brought her in. We tested her. She had a trapped emotion. I think it was grief or sadness that about her dad being gone. Sure. Is what it was. And so we released that emotion, and she left and came back about a week later. She said, the next time after you worked on my daughter, she said, when my husband came home, my daughter ran to the door and jumped into his arms.
Oh.
So you see, there's, and if you think about all the children and you think about the difficulties that kids have, this can be such a powerful skill that you can use yourself to help your own children function better and feel better. And I can't even tell you, we've raised 7 kids. We should have a moment of silence for my wife. We've raised 7 kids, and I can't even imagine not having the emotion code as a tool to help them, because we've been able to basically clear whatever emotional baggage shows up in them right away. And it's made just an enormous difference, I can't tell you.
I read the book and I've tried to do some studying, and I've done some practicing, and I'm not very good at it yet. And I'm wondering if you could, give some tips.
How do you know you're not good at it?
Well, I haven't been able to. It's the yes-no thing. I haven't quite been able to figure that.
The muscle testing?
Yeah, I'm not very good at that.
Well, there are a couple of mistakes that people make in their muscle testing. Now, in the emotion code book, we teach different methods. You can hold out, hold out their arm, and you can test that outstretched arm, and it'll be strong for yes and weak for no. The body is essentially a binary computer, and this is how we tap into the subconscious. The subconscious mind, by the way, contains all the information about what trapped emotions you might have, what's really wrong with you, who was involved in the emotions and when they occurred and everything else. And we teach methods of self-testing as well. So you can actually test yourself. Now, the simplest way to test yourself is what we call the sway test, where if you stand upright, if you're thinking about a particular thought that's either positive or true or congruent, the body will tend to sway forwards as you're holding that thought. You can try this at home. You'll tend to sway backwards away from thoughts that you might be holding of negativity or falsehood or incongruency.
Right.
So that's one way. Now, when you're testing yourself this way with we teach different methods of muscle testing. There are a couple of common mistakes that people make. One mistake that people make is they focus on their fingers and what's happening. Now, if you can type 40 or 50 words a minute or better, and you're typing along, what do you notice happens if you start looking at your fingers or thinking about what your fingers are doing? What happens?
Totally messes you up.
Yeah, I don't even do that anymore. I never think about them.
No, your speed would just go right down.
Absolutely.
Well, same thing with muscle testing. Okay, if you're thinking about what your fingers are doing, it kind of short circuits the process. You need to get focus on the person that you're working on, or yourself, or whatever. And by the way, love and gratitude
Start with those.
are really keys for this process to work really well. So that's one thing. People make a mistake focusing on their fingers. Okay, you don't want to focus on the fingers. Let that testing happen slightly separated from your thoughts.
Okay.
Don't worry, just let it go. Kids have no problem picking this up.
Interesting.
Adults have problems because we have to unlearn things.
Yeah.
Too analytical.
Yeah.
Not you.
Exactly.
Not her, no.
Well, the other mistake that people make is they use too much force. Now, I used too much force for many years, and it was actually, my fingers hurt from doing the self-testing for about 7 years until this is how dumb I am. I finally figured out that I could back off on the force. And really what you're doing, see, is when you're asking a question and you're getting an answer, you're really then sensing this subtle change that's taking place in the body. It's a subtle change. I mean, if you're hooked up to a lie detector machine and you say something that's untrue, the machine's going to pick it up, but you don't notice anything. But it's kind of a similar thing. The body will tend to be strong if you're in a congruent state. If you say something and the answer is yes, you'll be strong on downward pressure. Your fingers will be stronger. Your whole body is slightly stronger. If you say something that's incongruent or untrue or a lie or whatever, the body will be a little bit weaker. So the arm will go down on downward pressure. Or if you're being sensitive, there will be a change that takes place in the self-testing as well. So hopefully that will help. By the way, you can also use other methods. I mean, a lot of people will use a pendulum.
Yeah.
And the pendulum will swing a certain way. There are whole books written about that.
Yeah.
Dowsers, for example. I've been to dowsing school. Dowsers are the people that find water.
Right.
And there are dowsing instruments you can buy. And it's all the same thing. The key to it, though, I believe, is it has to do with the fact that the highest duty of the healer, I believe, is to act as a go-between for that higher power, whatever you believe that higher power to be. It's not a denominational thing. It's just that if you believe that there's a higher power, ask for help, because if you're doing it all totally on your own, well, then you're kind of limited. But if you ask for help from up above, then you're totally unlimited. See, it's really simple.
Unlimited. I love that. That's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you have any final words, any things that you would like for our listeners and viewers to really take away from the whole idea of the emotion code and emotional healing and energy work and stuff like that?
Well, yes, I think so. I'll tell you what, I really believe that everything that's happened to me in my entire life has prepared me to bring this message into the world. I didn't come up with this. I don't have that kind of an imagination. About our existence. And so there is something that we can do. Think about the people that you know, people that are suffering, people that are in pain, people that are depressed or that have PTSD. You can be the person that actually can help them. And it's really, really simple. And I'll tell you what I believe. I believe that this work is coming into the world at a time when we desperately need it. It is time for us to step out of our emotional baggage. It's time for us to become better instruments in the hands of that higher power if we choose to do that.
Yes.
The world has to change. And the world right now, I believe, is in this transformational process. It is changing.
Yes.
But the world will change as we change.
Yeah.
And we change as we shed our emotional baggage, as we open our hearts to love again, and as we start manifesting the perfect blueprint creation that is within each one of us, you see. Getting rid of our baggage can help us get rid of our physical problems as well as our emotional and mental problems. All those things can just go away. And so we can get off of the pharmaceutical drugs and we can move into a different world, really, where people are living from their heart and are manifesting that perfect creation that is inside their heart. Imagine what that would be like. That's where we're going. So my parting gift to all of you is I'd like you to go to this website. It's emotioncodegift.com. And if you go to emotioncodegift.com, you can download immediately a free copy of the Emotion Code book as a PDF. And you can also download the entire book on audio, okay?
Great.
Yeah, our book is not on audible.com. There's no other way that you can go to our website and you can buy these. It's about a $67 value. But I don't want there to be any kind of roadblock in the way. If you don't have enough money to do it, it's okay. This is our gift to you. Please go there, emotioncodegift.com, download the book, download the audio, listen to it, read it, and just have enough faith to try this, and you'll see Dr. Nelson's not making this up. This is actually real. It really does work.
Really does work. That's awesome.
Oh, aren't you sweet? That's so
Thank you so
kind.
much.
Thank you so much for setting that up for us in the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
No problem. I'm glad to do it. I mean, my mission is just to get this out to the world as fast as I can, and so I figure, well, if we take away the money part of it, maybe that will help.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
You know.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you, Dr. Bradley Nelson, for being with us today. This has been truly
Really
transformational and amazing
gift
for all of
You're
us.
welcome.
So
You're welcome. It's been really fun for me, too.
thank you. Thank you. Everybody, you have been listening to the Mighty Married Moms show with Debbie, Wendy, and Linda, and our special guest today, Dr. Bradley Nelson, telling us all about the Emotion Code. So please do check out his site. Go get his gift. And we would also ask if you would please leave us a rating and review on iTunes and share this with your family and friends. Go ahead and get into some great conversations. What does this mean to you? What does it mean to your life? How can you take the fact that you have emotional baggage and make something out of it that will change your life and change the lives of those around you as well?
Without sitting with a therapist for 17 visits over the course of 2 years or whatever,
Yeah.
but doing it pretty quickly and layperson to layperson. Let's do this.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Mighty Married Moms. Tune in twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays to meet fascinating and inspiring guests who will help you create the life you've always wanted.
You can find these episodes and special gifts just for you at mightymarriedmoms.com, as well as a link to our Facebook community,
where we continue the conversation around the kitchen table. Please also help share the love by leaving a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.